Hey, Assalamu alaikum. This is your coach Amina from Happy Home Coaching. And today I wanted to talk and set off a series called Stop Shouting, part one, which is the reason that you can't stop shouting. Now, sisters, I coach hundreds of Muslim mothers who are struggling to stop shouting. And even though it may feel like you're the only one that shouts, trust me, it is a huge problem that many sisters are struggling with. And because they're struggling with it and have tried so many things to stop, it's just become a way of dealing with their children, a default behavior that becomes harder and harder to break. And so I wanted to launch a series so that I could give you some pointers in order to be able to help you. The things that I share with my client that helps them to see beyond the shouting in order to be able to stop it. So what I wanted to share with you today was the real reason that you can't stop shouting. And I'm sure you've tried many things to stop shouting. My mum used to say that I should hold, water in my mouth so that I could stop shouting. But all I did was that I would spit it out and then rant away. And so I know it's a really difficult problem to stop. And it becomes very soon the only way that you know how to get your children to listen. If most mums, you've tried saying it once, twice, and by the third time, fourth time, fifth time, they're not listening. Shouting seems to get the job done, and therefore it becomes a default, and so before you know it, a habit that you cannot break. However, what you find, and the reason it becomes a real urgency to break that, is because very soon you start seeing some behavior in your children that alert you to why you wouldn't, to why it's not working for you. So it might be that you find your children shouting at each other, so they're copying the behavior. It might be that you find your child shouting back at you. It might be that your child starts answering back and showing resistance and showing anger and saying things like it's not fair. And it might be just because actually they've switched off from you. So I wanted to talk to you about, in this series, how to stop shouting. And for that, we've got to understand why we haven't been able to stop shouting in the first place, no matter what you've done. So it's got to a point where you realize it's not giving you the result you want. However, you're not sure how to stop, no matter what you're doing. The reason why most of us are unable to stop shouting is because what we don't realize is why we're shouting. Like, what are we shouting about? Like, often when I speak to mothers about what it was that made them lose their temper and what made them get angry, that led to the shouting, it often, as they're telling me, they're like, I know it sounds small, but it was, I got really upset. And you might find it's the same thing, whether it's spilt milk or whether it's, your child behaving in a way you don't like. And you find that your shouting becomes disproportionate to what your child actually did. And the reason that it grows so big in our mind, and that therefore our response is not almost equal to what the child did, is because what you're seeing in the moment isn't what your child is doing, like the spilt milk or the one lie, or them putting off the job you've asked them to do 10 times. It's not that you're seeing. It's normally what we've created in our minds about how our child would end up. So for example, if you have seen, your child tell a lie, most mums will tell you, maybe yourself, you'll know this, that you're not telling your child off because they told one lie. You're telling them off because in your mind, you're fearing that they will continue to tell lies until they become a liar, until they, come away from Islam, and they're going to have a really bad ending. So what you're telling off is almost that 40, 50-year-old child that you're imagining they're going to grow up to be. and you're trying to tell them, stop, don't do this, this is really serious, it's going to lead you to somewhere really bad. And so often we're not really telling off the person in front of us, we're telling off and we're shouting out the scenario we fear happening. So let me give you an example, another example. There's a lie example, and a lot of you, as I share that, normally relate to that. Another example might be if your child is resistant in doing their Arabic or Quranic homework. And again, and this is very particular with Muslim parents, I find that we get really worried and pressured about our children not doing their Arabic homework, or there is, their Quranic homework, madrasa homework, because for us, if they don't do that, they're going to end up coming away from Islam, not being connected to Allah or their deen, and ending up, again, a very bad ending. So you're imagining that scenario, and then you're telling them off because that's what you fear will happen. When in reality, all that might have happened was you've had a bit of resistance, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it, later, or I don't really want to do it now. And that you could deal with in a very positive way to encourage them or set, a boundary. You could deal with it in a much better way. But when you start getting worried about what is going to now happen in the future and how they're going to now behave, and become, not even behave, but, behave and therefore become, that's when you start feeling this intense fear or frustration or anger about what is going to become of them because of this one incident. And so I want you to think about the last time you shouted at your child. And for many of you, in many parts of the world, it's holiday time, so shouting may be on the increase. Tell me, what was the last thing that you shouted about? Take a moment to reflect. If you need to, take a moment to write it down. Can you see why that upset you so much? So if you looked at the fear behind that, the reason behind the shouting, what do you fear in that scenario your child will become? And really just take a moment to do this because it will be very helpful. What's your greatest fear? It might be that it's related to, Islam and their connection with Allah and their deen. It may be related to what sort of person they will end up with, or it may be, or end up as, or it may be related to what sort of values they will have. It may be related to whether they will become a success or not. It may be related to whether they'll become like someone you really don't want them to become, or they'll copy their behavior. So what is it that's your fear here that's driving the intense emotion behind the shouting? And if you've spotted it, now I want to ask you, is that even real? Like imagining a future scenario, telling your child off for something that they haven't become yet is normally us creating a horror movie and then living in that horror movie, imagining the worst, and then it's almost playing out as they tell the one lie or the second lie, or they resist to do the homework, or they, so we end up creating this imaginary story in our heads about what our child will become. And because we have that fear, our emotions are really intense, and we end up shouting, but it's based on something that isn't real. It's almost like you've directed a horror movie, and then you're forgetting that it's just a film, and you're getting scared, or you have drawn a scary character on a piece of paper, and then that's getting really, really scary because you imagine that it's going to be real and come chasing you. It's the imagination part. See, for a moment we stop seeing the behavior and we start imagining a future scenario. And it's that imagination, that part there, that causes us to shout, because that is intense, that is scary, that is something that we really don't want to happen. Whereas if we're just dealing with the one behavior, and if you could deal with it in a different way, which I'll share in the next part of the series, you could actually help your child overcome that bad behavior. However, by shouting, we end up closing ourselves off to being able to teach our children anything, because they stop listening. So yes, something has happened, and yes, we have to deal with it. But that moment is a moment that you deal with it in a productive way that helps your child and helps your parenting, or is a way that you create further resistance or your child switching off from you. And the reason that we shout and you know, create a situation that isn't beneficial for ourselves and our child is because actually we're not seeing the moment, the one action right now. We're seeing our greatest fear of what they will become play out. But that's not real, my sister. And the first step is to recognize that that's not real. So take a moment to reflect on your horror movie you're creating in your mind and recognize that it is not real. I hope that that helps. I hope that that's shown you something more deeper. And if you have any questions about it, please directly message me. If you would like to talk to me about your circumstances and what's happening, you know, as a result of shouting between you and your child, and you know your child has switched off or you're not sure how to reconnect with them, I'm going to give you a free gift for getting to the end of this training, a happy home breakthrough session where I'll help you get really clear on, you know, what's holding you back from having that happy home, what steps you need to take to be able to create a happy home in your home, and between each other, and peace and happiness between all of your family members. And you know, you can do that and book an appointment with me. It's a free consultation on www.meetme.so/Amina-Hossen. So you can book an appointment with me if you want some help. It's a free consultation worth £150. I'm giving it away for free. So do take advantage if you want some help and you don't know how to turn things around and repair the damage that's been done. However, if you're at the point where you just want to understand how to stop shouting, keep watching the series, and I'll look out for more. Been lovely having you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.